you said that this is a municipal farm.
Yes.
So the city actually owns this.
Yes.
So what happened with that? How did you get here?
This is sort of an example of what a municipal farm looks like whenever it's being born. I'm learning stuff very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
It's like drinking from a fire hose. That brings us into sort of the regenerative model that I'm trying to develop here. And it's simply because we have limited space, right? We didn't want to take all the forest land down. I need a lifestyle change. I was probably 60 pounds heavier and probably a hair's breadth away from a heart attack.
Where people are concerned that, well, you know, now the government's involved. How do you handle that? So you're Bret,
Yep.
and we are at a very interesting farm that you manage, and I want to make sure I get the farm name right. It's Fowl Play Farm MissBeeHaven.
That is correct.
Okay,
So
that's a mouthful.
That's the name of the company,
Okay,
right? That's the name
okay.
of the business. The actual land here that we're on is the old De Lorenzo family farm property.
Okay.
So the De Lorenzo family has had a long history in agriculture here. What we're doing in this space, it's a 10-acre farm plot is all it is.
Okay.
Inside of a larger 26-acre property envelope that's in
Oh, wow.
conservation. This is sort of why, you know, the farm footprint is on the small side, because the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts likes to protect a lot of extra land.
I was going to ask you that too. So you said it's 26 total acres,
Yep.
but we're like in a suburb.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
like we were driving down the road and we saw a lot of really nice houses
Oh, yeah.
set up, you know, in a suburb setting.
Yep.
So coming down this lane, it feels like a different world we stepped into.
Oh yeah, yeah. The town of Duxbury is only a few square miles in size. It's 12 square miles in size or something like that. I'm a geographer, I should know this. And we have a population of about 16,000 people. You know, coming from where you're coming from, probably pretty dense population envelope.
So tell me a little bit about why you're here, because you said that this is a municipal farm.
Yes.
So the city actually owns this.
Yes.
So what happened with that? How did you get here?
So the town of Duxbury owns the conservation land, so all the land that surrounds this space. It was the wish of the De Lorenzo family. The homestead is right up here in the front of the property.
Oh, okay.
But it was the wish of the De Lorenzo family to actually create a farm to sort of commemorate their time here. So this is sort of an example of what a municipal farm looks like whenever it's being born. And there were several different models that the town talked about as far as taking the 10 acres and dividing it up into parcels and then renting those parcels out to people who wanted to farm or garden. And whenever we had the conversation about, you know, the things that could be done, you know, I just suggested you should probably find a single farmer. In all of my wisdom, I'm a beginning farmer. I'm 4 years into getting into the real farming thing. This is my first official, we'll call it production year,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Which I'm not really producing much of anything right now. You know, I spent 25 years in the white collar world making maps for federal and state clients. That's
Okay.
what I came from. This is night and day different from what I'm doing, and the great thing is I'm learning stuff very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. Why would the city? I know you said like Massachusetts is big in conservation.
They are.
But why a farm, especially in such a, like you said, a densely populated area?
Yep. So the land trust folks that we have are very, very instrumental in trying to do things like bring agriculture back to the town. So they work with a lot of properties that are either old cranberry bogs, like cranberries are really big here, right?
Okay.
So they work with a lot of properties that are old cranberry bogs. They try to save those, restore them, maybe do things like blueberries or other stuff, not necessarily put them in cranberry. But we have a lot of lowland area, right? So a lot of wetland space and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, which makes it a bit challenging. This farm is unique in that it has a combination of upland stuff, which is what we're standing in the center of the farm, and lowland areas that we have to be mindful of while we're working around them. That brings us into sort of the regenerative model that I'm trying to develop here. We had a couple folks who were interested, made some suggestions about what could be done in this space. Preserving trees, not
Right.
cutting things down,
Right.
having kind of a single farmer sort of get it started, and then start bringing other farmers in as either, you know, guest farmers who are going to control part of the enterprise of the farm.
Okay.
So for instance, if we have somebody who wants to do egg-laying chickens, right? We combined, their egg-laying process with what we're doing. And what they would do is they would hop into sort of the rotational management of the farm itself. So they would have to be kind of brought on board to kind of follow the same procedure, because what we're doing is we're building soil, right? And we're building soil because we're maximizing every square inch of land that we can in order to make some kind of a profit off. If we don't have that healthy soil, right, all we're going to be doing is just putting things back into the soil, and we're not going to be getting much out.
So this is then directed as a for-profit farm.
Yeah.
If the goal is to make profit, who is making the money? I assume you're getting paid in some capacity.
No.
Oh.
No. So
you're a volunteer.
I'm a guest farmer. I've rented the land, or leased the land, for 10 years. Volunteered, right, to build the infrastructure for the farm. In return, I'm exercising pretty much the full application of regenerative farming, the way that I want to do it on the land here. Work on developing, right, that profit from working this land.
The animals are the product.
Yep. Animals.
And
eggs,
then you're
produce.
where are you selling them to?
So right now we have a presence in a couple local farmers markets, and we do a little bit of like online stuff, but we don't have a huge digital footprint yet because there's too many other things to do.
Right. Okay. I can feel my wheels turning trying to figure out what the cash flow is like and where. I know a lot of people in our audience are going to have those questions.
Oh, yeah.
So once it is up and running, where are those profits going? Who's getting paid?
So hopefully eventually I'll get paid.
Okay.
Hopefully eventually the few interns that we're working on bringing in will get paid, right?
Okay.
We're also working with the NRCS to kind of flex some internship sort of stuff, and then also the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, we're working with them as well to sort of flex some of that to see if we can get a few bucks to help our interns out, or our burgeoning interns. The income flow is primarily through our egg enterprise right now, which is small, and also our meat chickens. So we grow pasture-raised Cornish cross out on the backfield here.
Okay.
And those two right now, with the exception of a few bits of produce that we're starting to get going.
Okay.
Those are the income streams at the moment. So.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And you proposed yourself.
Yep.
Why? where did that come from? You're like, I've never farmed. I want to start a farm from scratch.
Well, believe it or not, it came from COVID, right? Whenever we had to sit, right? Whenever we had to stop doing what we were doing, I was sitting at the dinner table, and like in my family, we always sat down for dinner, right?
Right.
So that wasn't anything that was new, different, or exciting, but I sat down and I realized that, holy cats, there's so much time that I've lost running around doing the stuff that I was doing, right?
Like what?
Well, commuting into Boston,
Okay.
right? So
like for jobs, okay.
For jobs, right. So for here, it's an hour and a half commute into Boston each way.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Ew.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you take public transportation or you're driving yourself. Yeah, so just pick what level of stress you want to sign up for. That's what made me kind of sit down and go, okay, I've lost so much time with my family. I need to do something that's gonna change that. You know, I need a lifestyle change. I was probably 60 pounds heavier and probably a hair's breadth away from a heart attack. And so I sat down and I'm like, well, we've always had chickens, we've always had bees, we've always had, a small garden plot in the yard, just working on teaching the kids, in this kind of setting, like, where their food comes from, animal husbandry and stuff like that. But that was really the extent of my experience. So because I was able to sit for a while, I had discovered, Joel Salatin probably back in 18 or 17, whenever Food Inc., hit.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm like, what's this guy about? And then it was like, what's this process about? Just started doing that research and said, what, this makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for this space because I have such a small space to work with. And I am trying to do things to help folks in town realize that agriculture can happen without having to level the entire forest stand. So I'm working with a forester, state forester. Okay. I have a couple highly skilled arborists that come in and help do this work. But the good thing for me, is that, a lot of the development and production of the infrastructure here and of the work that's being done so far to develop the farm, the town has been providing funds for that. Okay. So we've had a bit of a funding stream that's allowed us to get some of this stuff done. You know, we're still, of course, looking for more funds in order to do irrigation and do perimeter fencing and stuff like that. Again, we're working with NRCS and some grants to try to help get that sort of thing done.
So next we've got your sheep.
Yeah.
You said they're across, and it looks like you've got like some panels up and then some of the tape wire.
Yep.
What are you doing? Can we walk in there a little bit?
Yeah, we absolutely can.
What are we doing with them?
Well, so in lieu of a barn, because we don't have a barn for them yet, that's on the list of things to build.
Okay, so you use the IBC tote buckets.
Yeah, so we're just dry lotting them. Just be mindful of the electric. It's
yes.
on. So we're just dry lotting them for now. And then we're playing around with, you know, just some rotation. You know, the problem is this is their lane that they use. So the true rotational model that I'm familiar with, and I'm probably sure most of the audience is familiar with, isn't exactly this, but it's close. So I've got to work out some details. I've got a baseline that I'm going to be running for the length of this particular plot, where I'll set up, you know, just a hot wire along that, and then I'll be able to use taped reels on tape on the reels to move them more efficiently. Right now, we're just hand winding. Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
That's fun.
No, it's not fun. But you know, I wouldn't have it any other way, because if I'm not learning through kind of the pain of it, you know, then I'm not doing myself any good.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that sounds silly, but you know, that's
no, I get that, and I really admire your willingness to learn. And if you don't, I think that, especially when people start out farming, they think that they need all the gadgets right away. And I think that there's really something to doing it rough first. I mean, you speak of Joel Southon, and he says, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing wrong first. So I think that there's a lot to that. So they're currently here, but you're gonna start rotating them. We're in the woods, so let's talk a little bit about what you've done with the woods, because this has kind of been your primary project, right? Like the city wanted to clear it, the people said, no, don't do that, and this is where you stepped in. So what are we doing with the woods?
Yeah, so basically, whenever we were talking about what to do, this was back in the spring of 21, so like right around St. Patrick's Day of 2021. You know, we're pretty much standing in almost the same spot, but it was so densely packed with
like
dead
that
and down
over there
stuff. Similar to that, go further back in the woods past those piles. These piles are what they call wildlife piles. And so part of the procedure for actually developing a forest management plan, whenever you're harvesting trees out of an area that all the animals are like really familiar with and you're converting it to agriculture, those wildlife piles just help them make the transition from the spot that you don't want them in to the spot that you want them in. You know, that's actually part of the prescription for developing this silvopasture. And whenever we came in, you know, we said, well, it makes sense to thin this out and clear this out, put livestock here inside, build this soil, and then maybe eventually turn this into something that resembles a food forest or something that resembles, you know, a full rotational grazing model where you actually can get, you know, a couple of not big cows, but small cows in here to sort of do their thing as well. And then, you know, there's another avenue, there's another enterprise that we add to the farm. Developing silvopasture is not cheap. It's actually one of the more expensive agroforestry practices that's out there. I've learned that. I had no idea before. You know, we had a pretty sizable chunk of money that the town said, okay, take this, which was probably just under 100 grand, take this and go develop the farm. And I was like, yes, we have money to develop 10 acres. And I'm like, we're gonna do great. And about probably 40 grand into it, I'm like, we're not gonna have enough money. Like, we need a lot more. And so the really awesome thing about it, and I got a lot of this from reading basically all of Joel's books, everything that Gabe Brown has written, you know, and some of the supplemental stuff that, you know, that Justin and a couple other homesteaders have written. I was able to better sort of understand, like, what it really costs, right, to make something like this happen, and then sort of how to defray those costs, right? And I think a lot of people run into problems. I know I had at first, because you're sitting there going, well, you know, I just use some of my money that I have to do this in order to keep things moving forward. And, you know, before I knew it, I was like, whew, we are going to not have any money left if I keep doing it this way.
Yeah.
So, renting and putting, your own cash into something like this, that's a little on the sketchy side, simply because, you want to get a return out of it, right? You want to make things work for you, but, on the same terms, you also want the municipal body, the town who's operating the land technically, to, really come in and say, okay, we're going to cover this, that, and the other thing. And that was part of the hard learning.
Working on a farm that is municipal. Yeah, tell me a little bit about some of those struggles.
Well, some of the challenges are, you don't always have folks who understand agriculture. I'm still learning it.
Right.
But you don't. I'm not stepping into a group of people necessarily who know farming. The great thing is I have in town, we have an agricultural commission, which is fantastic. So I've leaned on them heavily. All of the long-time farm families in town, I've been able to lean on as well. The O'Neill farm, which we abut over here, Carl O'Neill, the generational farmer, he's 88, just a wealth of knowledge.
A common theme that we have had is those that had bigger, more commercialized farms were a little less likely to give any advice or knowledge or experience or anything like that. And sometimes even there's hard pushback about anybody coming in and trying to do things in a regenerative model, or somebody who just has no experience farming, they tend to not be as welcoming. So I love that you're getting a lot of information from them. Is that just how they are, or what do you think kind of heated that?
It's hard to put a finger on that, because you read stories about, like, cow people and how they, the story of the old cow farmer. Carl O'Neill is an old cow farmer. And so, hearing stories about how, unapproachable they are, or how set in their ways they are.
Yeah.
Or how, I'm going to use the word judgmental, they can be. I've done this my whole life. My dad's done this his whole life, and so on and so forth down the line. Why would I change anything? Why would I be interested in anybody who wanted to change anything? Which
I can totally respect and understand. I mean, I come from that.
Yeah.
Lots of generations of farmers on my side. Yeah. Why fix it if it's not broken?
Right.
I mean, I'm doing it. It's hard work no matter what you do. So I can understand that. But these people that you're working with are just open arms.
They're very I don't know what the right word is. I hate to use the word progressive, but they're very open-minded to doing things differently. And maybe it's because they see, the traditional way of farming perhaps is shrinking. That's with age though, right? I mean, we know, the number of farms and farm families in this country is vanishing rapidly. And maybe they're just like, he wants to do farming. Let's just embrace whatever it is that he wants to do.
Yeah. At least it's farming and not suburbs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback from non-farm families about that. They come back here and I've done tours with them, and they said, "Thank God you're not building houses back here." And I'm like, right? So that's a really positive piece of feedback from non-farm families who live here in town, who see what's going on and who are like, I'm so glad that this is happening. And then, of course, all the questions. Is there going to be a farm stand? Are you going to have pumpkin picking? Are you going to do this, that, and the other thing? And I said, yes. We're going to do all of those things because, again, in order to leverage what the land can provide, we need to consider strongly a regenerative approach, because we want that soil community, we want that soil microbial community as strong as it can possibly be. I mean, we're standing in another 10,000 square foot produce bed that hasn't been developed yet. So what we do is we take all of the material that we harvest. So all the trees that we harvest either get chipped or they get stockpiled and turned into fence posts, or the larger stuff will get milled into boards so we can construct our stuff. That's what happens with all the material, and it goes right back into the farm. There's not been a scrap of material that's been harvested here that has left the farm.
That's awesome.
So we have a windrow of chips behind us here that's going to be spread over here. It's going to create probably a 6 to 8 inch bed of chips. That's just primarily going to be weed barrier right off the start, but as that stuff begins to decompose and we start adding nitrogen components to that, then we're cooking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, that's what's happening in the front produce field here.
Okay.
Is we've done the same thing. I call it a carbon bomb, but put 6 to 8 inches of chips down in that 10,000 square foot space, and then we develop our rows. We use a method called sheet mulching, right? It's just layers of cardboard and manure, and then we plant down into that. That's kind of the approach. And so in this space, there's actually going to be 3 10,000 square foot produce beds down beyond the material that we have stockpiled here. Will be the third one, and that'll contain a couple high tunnels. So
cool.
we'll be able to extend the growing season. Eventually we will have larger animals here. We'll be running pigs on the farm to help with some tillage and to help with some fertilization and all of those things. So in order to get to that point, and this is part of the plan, is perimeter fencing for the entire 10 acres and gates. In order to get funding through grants through the NRCS, you have to have 4-legged ungulates on the farm, ruminants. You have to have 4-legged ruminants on the farm in order for that to happen. So I couldn't put pigs on the farm and have that be the start of the NRCS clock.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that they required it to be ruminants.
It has to be a ruminant. So
at least here, anyway.
Yeah, a sheep, a goat, a cow.
Yeah.
Any of those things, they have to be on the farm first.
Huh.
Yeah. So talk about putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Because
interesting.
The last thing that you want is, in the words of Joel, the cows to get out.
Yeah.
Right? We're starting with a small batch of sheep, and it's a calendar year from the time that they arrive. So they got here February 2nd, and I had them over here in the produce field to start with, and shifted them across the street just 2 months ago. What is this, June?
Yes.
3 months ago, I shifted them across the street. But I've never dealt with sheep, right? So shearing was like, it's stuff that you saw at the fair and stuff like that. It's not stuff that you did.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, how do you shear a sheep? And the folks that brought us the sheep, she provided me with like a crash kit for medical stuff, and she's like, here's a pair of hand shearers, scissors, right? And she goes, I use this on the sheep all the time. They're great. She explained to me how to do it. I'm like, okay. And so I was waiting for the right time to do that, and I just said to myself, you know what? Things are going to go wrong if I do this without at least somebody here to guide me. The closest person at that point in time that I had to a sheep person, because part of why the sheep came to me was because they were moving. They moved to Kentucky. So part of the reason why the sheep came was because they had to make their flock a little smaller. With that, we have her shorn, and the shearer is looking at me because she's pregnant. And I said, I couldn't tell. And he's like, well, she's bagged up now. And I'm like, yeah. I said, that means she's pregnant. And he's like, yeah, she'll probably drop in a day or two. I said, yeah, I think you're right.
Oh my gosh.
And so we set her up here, and now I've got to get him trained to electric before I turn them loose.
Yeah.
That's on the menu for this weekend. Today's Friday.
So before we end, I'm just curious if there is like other towns out there, or maybe townspeople that are like, wow, that would be so great in our area. What are some things you would recommend to get started on something like this? I mean, I know you're still in like your preliminary phases, but you obviously have already gone through so many trials and tribulations, and you've had successes. So what would you recommend?
Well, believe it or not, being the kind of entrepreneur that I consider myself, we've already reached out to several communities around us. And we, meaning my business partner, who's one of the forest guys who does this, because his equipment's specialized to fit into small niches like this. Short story in forestry, if the land is generally smaller than 300 acres in size, a forester doesn't want to touch it. There's too much equipment, there's too much overhead for them to come to a space and do it. He's developed a system where he can come in here and be very effective and still make a good profit coming out of it, because he's got such specialized equipment.
Okay.
So we've already talked to a few communities who are very interested in doing this, and the first thing that we talk about is making sure that they have an agriculture commission, right? Making sure they have an agriculture body as part of their structure. Because if they don't, then you don't have necessarily all of the farmers in town, or a majority of the farmers in town, sort of on the same page and pushing for the same stuff, because you need that voice, especially in New England town government. You need that voice. whenever it comes to supporting a municipal farm or a community garden or whatever.
Right.
Because then it falls to like a local conservation commissioner or some other, land management person who might have an idea, a really good idea about how to approach something or how to do something, but there's no community sort of surrounding that. And an agricultural commission or an agricultural group body within that governmental structure is really, really helpful to have. So it's simply getting those people together to have regular meetings. Just what are you doing over here on this land? Like we have a lot of oystermen here, right? A lot of shellfish.
Yeah.
A lot of shellfish farming. Those people are also part of the agricultural community here, of course.
Right.
Right. What are you guys doing out on the water? Like what are the things you're concerned about? Just having those lines of communication open, and then having sort of that unified body to help sort of create a vision of the importance of agriculture in the community. And they're unified by that, right? And I think it's important because then they can carry that message to folks who don't really understand or really have a good concept of.
I know a lot of people, sometimes, especially you speak of like Joel Salatin, have concerns when government starts getting, into our food and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But when a government is trying to really do the right thing here, how do you handle conversations like that, maybe with people, or have you had to handle conversations like that where people are concerned that, well, now the government's involved? How do you handle that? How does that work?
Well, I tell them for a municipal farm, what we do is, we talk about how important it is to have an underlying support structure. And in order to produce, or in order to put in place that underlying support structure, you need someone who's going to be sort of the go-between for the community and the farm, all right? So in a municipal farm model, if you don't have an active agricultural group that's connected to the government, and that's the thing. You have a really nice go-between, right? And of course, you obviously have to have people in those government seats who are on board with what it is that you're doing. So there's no harm in talking with your local legislatures about what it is that you're doing. One of the first things that I did almost as soon as the ink was dry on the lease, I called up my local state rep, who's very active in town here. And his name's Josh. And I said, Josh, why don't you come down and take a look at the farm? I have no idea what you know or think about as far as, agriculture and food and stuff like that. But let's just take a walk and see what this is about, right? And brought his whole crew, right? Which was awesome.
Wow.
We had Democratic guys, we had Republican guys, we had, in the middle of the road guys, we had all these people show up. We walked around the farm, talked about the vision, talked about what we wanted to do. It was all talk. Nothing was done.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, what can we do for you? I'm like, I didn't even think about that. It didn't even cross my mind. I just wanted to see sort of where people sat whenever it came to like the notion of what a municipal farm could be. Very surprised here in New England because, government is a little different here. The way that the response was, the positive response at that level was absolutely terrific. I know that I have people who I can call who are going to say, what is it that we can do to help? So one of the things that they offered was, we threw a bunch of money in, in the town budget for some just general municipal work. Infrastructure development is what it was called. And, they looked around, there's no infrastructure here. What's the first thing you need? And so I just went through the list. Now I started at perimeter fencing and ended at solar power because the town does not want to run a power line into the farm space for whatever reason. And I said, because we don't want to run power from the road, I need ground mount solar. And in this place, ground mount solar is because it's unsightly. Even though it's one of the most utilitarian types of solar that you can get. So I said, I need a ground mount solar array that'll carry this much power to do this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, money's there. And I was like, really? And just let us know what the system's going to cost, how it's going to work, and we'll find ways to fund it.
Wow.
Right. So it's simply having the conversation.
It really is about having the conversation, because I believe that majority of people who got into government agencies really just wanted to help and connect people.
Right.
There's bad in every single industry.
Right.
Every single industry has someone that's bad. Farming, government, doctors, lawyers, you know, whatever. But you're right, it's just having the conversation. It's inviting them out. It's talking to them. You don't have to baby the conversation.
Right.
You can just say, I just want to talk to you about what I'm doing because I think it's really cool and I think you might find it interesting.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, you can't approach it with kid gloves. If you did, then what you're not doing is you're not helping to educate whoever's there.
Right.
You're not helping to deliver whatever message it is to that person or those people, because once you start having you know, just that organic conversation, right? And that's why I wanted to have them out here as soon as we got it, so that I could start figuring out who is who where. I wasn't necessarily trying to find out, okay, we're the bad guys and we're the good guys. But, you know, I wanted those local representatives to be aware, you know, this is happening. I wanted them to just sort of, you know, either keep their eyes open for things that are coming or be a mouthpiece for it.
Right.
Because, you know, bringing the small farm back to your community is so important.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I am not discounting, you know, any farmer out there doing anything that they need to do. Right.
Right.
Because we're all in it together.
Absolutely.
And so if you sit there and say, well, you know, industrial farming is junk and this is the only way to do it, you're not helping anyone, right? You're not even helping yourself. But if you embrace the agricultural movement as it is, and you help try to breathe new life into it by engaging the way that I'm trying to engage, I think that's what's going to help, you know, just keep things moving. And hopefully, eventually, we'll put the brakes on, you know, the contraction of agriculture, especially local agriculture, and, you know, put that on the forefront of things, move that stuff forward.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Bret, for having me out and showing me what amazing things you're doing. You found us actually.
Yeah.
And so I could not have found a better place. I love what you're doing here, and we're definitely going to keep following along to watch how you grow and to share your message and connect other communities that might be able to do this too.
Very cool.
So thank you for having me out.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know that we can get kind of extreme at times, and some parts of like the homestead and the regenerative farming movement is about self-sufficiency, doing it all on your own. And there's a lot of people that, you know, don't want the government involved in what they're doing at all. And all of that is okay. I'm here to tell you that I don't have any opinions on what people want to do on their land. I also believe that everybody has a seat at the table. Finding Bret and finding this farm, I think, gives a lot of really great hope to people who don't have the capacity or the ability to have a farm. Maybe it helps towns that have a chunk of land that they don't know what to do with, but they want to do something good with it. There is a lot of good potential in a model like this, and I just hope that we can keep having conversations like this and that other people can also do things like this, because it feels very promising, and I just love it. I hope that it continues to prosper and that Bret is able to really build something here and connect other communities that can do it too. Thank you for coming along with me on this brand new journey here. We have quite a few other farms to go visit. If you haven't seen it before, we are building our Instagram. So go check us out on Instagram, breaking_new_roots. We would love to see you over there. We just share behind the scenes stuff on the farms that we're touring, but also behind the scenes stuff on just our lives, our travels, where we are. Maybe we're fishing with the kids. Maybe we went to Washington, D.C. Just all of those fun things. And we just want to share that with you. So come on, come share the journey with us, and we will see you at the next